It is a day for optimism. I want to salute, of course, President Trump, whose decisive leadership has made this possible, Mr. Kushner, Mr. Witkoff, the Qataris, the Egyptians, Turkey, who've been essential to getting to this moment. The next 48 hours are crucial. We urge the parties, particularly Hamas, to follow through, release all the hostages, and including the deceased hostages. The President and I discussed in the White House how Canada can support this process. We are supporting with humanitarian aid. There's other mechanisms that we can do to support it. And I urge, as I say, I urge all parties. We're encouraged. We're encouraged, but it's the first phase, and there's more to come.
That was Prime Minister Mark Carney this morning expressing optimism as Israel and Hamas get closer to possibly ending the war. The leaders of both parties have agreed to the first phase of a U.S.-backed ceasefire deal, which would see the exchange of hostages and prisoners in the coming days. The U.S. president is calling the agreement a momentous breakthrough.
It's really peace in the Middle East. And you remember October 7th was terrible, but also from the Hamas standpoint, they probably lost 70,000 people. That's big retribution. That's big retribution. But at some point, that whole thing has to stop, and we're going to see to it.
Hamas says U.S. officials have provided guarantees that the war has ended permanently, but that's not finalized just yet. The Israeli government is meeting right now to vote on the ceasefire resolution. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, are said to be in that meeting. And officials say a ceasefire will take effect immediately following the Israeli government's approval. Now, we're watching closely and we'll bring you any updates as they come in. But joining me now in the studio is Ido Moed. He is, of course, Israel's ambassador to Canada. Ambassador, thank you for your time today. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have any updates on whether or not the government has formally voted on this and approved it at this point in time, or are those conversations still happening?
Conversations are still happening, but I want to note this is a historical day, and we're extremely grateful for President Trump for taking the initiative and to reaching this breakthrough through which we hopefully will get our 48 hostages back from Gaza after 2 years. The government is still deliberating. There are a lot of details, a lot of issues to be discussed, but once this is approved, as you just mentioned, the ceasefire will start, and the clock will also start ticking for the hostages to come home. This is the most important thing that Israel is waiting for. People in Israel feel today elated. They are extremely happy. Our hostages are coming back. We can breathe again. But we also remember that this is just one part. We know that Iran is still there. Iran is continuing to prepare to attack Israel. What they've started through Hamas, through 7 fronts around Israel, they will continue to do. So we have to be very vigilant of the situation in the Middle East and very careful when we're talking about peace.
This claim from Hamas that they say U.S. officials have provided guarantees that the war has ended permanently. Can we draw that conclusion, given that a lot of conditions still need to be met, right? The hostages need to be released. The remains of the dead hostages need to be returned. Can we assume that the war has ended permanently?
We can hope, but with Hamas, we can never trust. There is no way in the world that Hamas will drop their agenda, which calls for the annihilation of the state of Israel. And as long as they don't disavow that agenda, their core principle of existence, nothing will change in effect. So when they say whatever they say, they actually mean that that's a temporary stop, but they will, of course, will continue. We know that. We're prepared for that. And therefore, it's so important that the mechanism that will rule Gaza will be without Hamas, that Hamas will be fully disarmed, that the Gaza Strip will be demilitarized, and that the future administration of the Gaza Strip will be one that will take care of the people of Gaza and not of this horrendous agenda of Muslim Brotherhood and the Hamas movement, which are so dangerous not only to Israel, but to the whole region. And the reason why so many countries in the region, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, came together in this to achieve this is because all of them understand that Hamas is a destructive factor, not just for Israel, but for the region. We know that Arab countries with which Israel has had peaceful relations throughout this ordeal and long before that also support an agreement that will bring peace and stability. But we know that there is a long way to go, and therefore the 20-point plan is something that gives us hope, gives us a sort of a way forward. But we know that before we get there, we have to have all our hostages back. We know that we have to have full demilitarization of Gaza. We have to have disarmament and a new administration come into place. All the points that the Israeli government has decided on last August to make sure that we do achieve a situation which is stable and secure for Israel.
The 20-point plan goes well beyond just the return of the hostages and the ceasefire, not just the return of the hostages, because obviously that is a very important thing, but it goes beyond that. And it talks about the ability of Gazans who want to leave and come back and build a better Gaza. The initial plan is for some sort of a technocratic government overseen by multinational, a board, for lack of a better term. But Gazans who return to build a better Gaza, and with what happened at the UN, would probably want it to become its own state over time. We've spoken many times, and you said Israel is not supportive of a two-state solution at this moment in time. Can you get there if this ceasefire turns into peace? Do you think there is the possibility for a two-state solution after the expression at the UN General Assembly and the details laid out in the 20-point plan?
The UN Assembly and all these ideas, wonderful papers that have been signed by so many countries, including Canada, don't make any difference on the ground except for the fact that they emboldened Hamas. Hamas thanked Canada for recognizing a Palestinian statehood because they said that is a direct fruit of our attack on October the 7th. So if anything is counterproductive, that was one of these issues, recognizing Palestinian statehood. What we need is to build trust. The trust that we have inside Israel between Jews and Arabs, Muslims, Christians, Druze, Armenians, whoever they are, that kind of a trust, this is the kind of a trust that we have to build with others around us. We have it with the countries around us, with Egypt and Jordan and Gulf states and so on. Right. We've built that trust, and it's possible, but it's possible only when we hear something like Prime Minister Carney mentioned, a Zionist Palestinian state. A Zionist Palestinian state, meaning that it will recognize Israel's right to exist as the homeland of the Jewish people. That has not been done by the Palestinian government up until now.
Well, I mean, I appreciate your position that it emboldened Hamas, but here they are in the wake of that agreeing to a ceasefire and the return of hostages, which is not something they would necessarily do if they're emboldened, would you think? I mean, if there is a unanimity, Hamas has to be out of any kind of control in the days ahead, or we could end up back in this conflict. I mean, if they were truly emboldened, would they have agreed to this, do you think?
I would say that they feel that they have a position right now because they think that the international community still supports Palestinian statehood based on what happened on October the 7th. And this idea exists among many Palestinians. We have to remember that when we look into the future, right now, in the mindset of many Palestinians, October the 7th led to recognition of Palestinian statehood, at least from Canada. That's the perception from the Palestinian side. And as long as that is the case, right, coexistence, peaceful coexistence is impossible.
Canadians would argue that the recognition happened in spite of October 7th. You know, would you not agree there's some merit in that point?
I think whether I agree or not doesn't matter. What matters is what Palestinians look at. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you that from Palestinian perspective, and this is what all of us have to remember, from Palestinian perspective, Canada did something that is actually in line with October the 7th. I'm fully aware of the fact that it was not the intention of the Canadian government. But we did make it very clear to the Canadian government in advance that this will be the result. And of course, that's what emerged. So if we want to see a change among the Palestinians, one that will be supported by the Israeli Knesset, and you remember I mentioned last time, 99 out of 120 members of the Knesset voted against a two-state solution, which is from left to right, almost all members of the Knesset, because we cannot have this, because we don't trust that the other side is interested in coexisting with us. So I would say, let's talk about Zionist Palestinian statehood. What does that mean? and see where we get from there. And once that discussion evolves, then we can talk about building trust and something that is a future that is coexistence for both sides according to this, satisfies both sides.
So obviously there is some hope here, though, with a ceasefire proposal and the return of the hostages being on the table. Still needs to be fully voted on by the government, though you seem convinced there seems to be enough votes there that it will happen,
yes,
despite some of the what would be described as hardliners opposing this. But the military action continues in Gaza. There's still some strikes in there today. So there is a tenuousness to this. I mean, why continue the military operations even as the cabinet and the government are meeting to decide on the ceasefire?
There is no full ceasefire yet, but the instruction was given, and I think it was also published by Israel. The chief of command told the Israeli forces, we have to prepare for ceasefire, which means tone down. But the events that happened today, for example, were incidents where Israeli forces were approached by militants, by terrorists, so they reacted. But we very much want the ceasefire to take effect so that the hostages will be able to come out. We understand this arrangement and we want to get there. But we are not there yet because there are some political issues that need to be ironed out, and because, of course, militarily, we have to do the right thing. And doing the right thing means also to take care of the security of the Israeli forces on the ground, and this is what is happening right now.
It's coming up to Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada, and it was Thanksgiving weekend 2 years ago here in Canada that the October 7th attack happened. I know the dates don't quite align, but it was this holiday weekend when we saw that news. And it was around the first time I think we did our very first interview. The orange tie you're wearing now, you wear that as a tribute to the Bibas children who were taken hostage and killed.
Murdered.
What are your thoughts now as the potential for the hostages living and unfortunately dead could be coming home after 2 years of this?
The potential is very big. It's the best time that we've had up until now, and I think all of us are convinced that we'll see them home very, very soon. We need that because we need that as air to breathe. This is the sense among all Israelis. Some are more concerned about the future and the security of the region, and some just want to see the hostages come back. And all of us know that bringing in all the hostages and the remains of everybody may take some time because we already hear some indications that it won't be as easy to find the remains of everyone. But this is a historical moment for Israel. After 2 years, having fought on 7 fronts, making a huge difference for the security of the region, taking down the Iranian-supported proxies from Hezbollah to the Houthis, most of them, and Hamas, of course, and the others. It's a moment for us to look together, all the countries in the region, to say, how do we want to have a future that is peaceful? And I think for the Palestinians, it's a moment for introspection and to look at Israeli society and see how would they like to live together side by side. In Israel, for us to build the trust with Palestinians that do not support Hamas, we'll be thinking about Vivian Silver. Vivian Silver, Israeli-Canadian peace activist who was killed on October the 7th, who was murdered on October the 7th, who was driving before that Palestinian kids to hospitals in Israel because she believed that that kind of activism will bring peace. So this is what we'll be remembering, and this is what we'll be trying to do also in the future.
I have one last quick question, if I may. I know things have been difficult between Israel and Canada throughout this, at times, on the foreign policy disagreements. Canada's talked about playing a role in the reconstruction. What kind of role do you see for Canada in what comes next?
I think that first and foremost, Canada has to turn around towards Israel and start working with Israel on the future. The peace plan that has been put on the table by President Trump is one that involves Israel, that deals with Israel's concerns. And if Canada wants to play a role, I think that is what Canada needs to do.
Ido Moed, Israel's ambassador to Canada. Thank you for your time today, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.